Let's compare the new Mobile G5 versus the Motorola Moto G Fast. Now, to see the most up-to-date pricing for both of these phones, take a look at the link in the video description, as prices do change as time goes on. However, last time I checked, these two devices are pretty similar in price, which is mostly the reason why I'm making this video. Now, with the new Mobile G5, we're getting a 6.55-inch display compared to a smaller 6.4-inch display with the Moto G Fast. Now you can see when holding the two phones up next to each other, they're actually about the same size. It's just that the bottom bezel with the Moto G Fast is larger compared to the new Mobile G5. Now the display with both of these devices is LCD. Both phones are 720p as well. Both devices offer a PPI of 268. But with the new Mobile G5, we're getting a 20:9 aspect ratio display compared to 19.5:9 with the Moto G Fast. So with the new Mobile G5, the display is a little bit more on the narrow but taller side compared to the Moto G Fast, where it's a little bit shorter and wider. But in general, these two phones are similar enough that there's not a major difference when it comes to the form factor. Now, the new Mobile G5 is advertised to have a 91% screen-to-body ratio compared to an 82% screen-to-body ratio with the Moto G Fast. Now, just by looking at these two devices, it doesn't seem like the screen-to-body ratios are really that much different. I mean, I suppose you could say that the top bezel is a little bit thicker on the Moto G Fast as well as the sides, and definitely on the bottom, it's a little bit thicker as well. But in general, these two phones look definitely more similar than different. Now with both devices, we do have front-facing cameras situated off to the upper left. With the new Mobile G5, we have a 16 megapixel front-facing camera compared to an 8 megapixel front-facing camera with the Moto G Fast. Now with the new Mobile G5, we're getting 64 gigabytes of internal storage compared to the Moto G Fast, where we're getting 32 gigabytes of internal storage. So with this phone, we are getting half the amount of internal storage. Now both devices do feature microSD card expansion though, which is definitely nice to see. Now neither of these two phones feature wireless charging, and with this device from New Mobile, we're getting a fingerprint sensor on the back, and we're also getting Face Unlock. Whereas with the Moto G Fast, we're just getting the fingerprint sensor, and this phone does not offer Face Unlock. Let's now test out the fingerprint sensors on both phones, starting off with the new Mobile G5. There we go. And then now the Moto G Fast, and that was very quick as well. So we are getting nice, fast, and responsive fingerprint sensors with both of these phones. Now taking a look at the backside of both devices, both phones do have quite a few cameras. Now with the new Mobile G5, we do have a quad camera setup with a 16 megapixel main camera, an 8 megapixel ultra wide angle camera, a 2 megapixel depth sensing camera, and a 2 megapixel macro camera. Whereas with the Moto G Fast, we have a 16 megapixel main camera, an 8 megapixel ultra wide angle camera, and a 2 megapixel macro camera. Now both phones do offer portrait mode for both the rear and front cameras. However, with the Moto G Fast, they are able to achieve portrait mode without having an actual dedicated depth sensing camera, which is certainly very impressive. Now here's how things look with the main cameras on both devices. Then from here, we can switch over to the ultra wide angle cameras on both, and you can see how things look here. Now, without a doubt, both ultra-wide-angle cameras do fit a lot more content into the frame, especially compared to the main camera, and it seems like both ultra-wide cameras here fit about the same amount of content. Sometimes some ultra-wide-angle cameras are a bit wider than others, but it seems to be about equal here. Then from here, we can switch back to the regular cameras on both. Then from here, we can switch over to portrait mode on both devices to get those nice blurred-out backgrounds. In addition to that, we do have the macro modes. So you can access it right here with the Moto G Fast. And then with the new Mobile G5, just swipe over to the edge, over to more. And then you'll see macro close up right there. And then you're able to get nice and close and take crisp looking pictures, showing off a lot of detail. Then we can flip around to the front facing cameras on both phones, and I do have portrait mode enabled on both right now. And you can see from here that we do have those nice blurred out backgrounds. Now with the new Mobile G5, we're getting 4 gigabytes of RAM, compared to the Moto G Fast, where we're getting 3 gigabytes of RAM, so 1 gig less of RAM. And then with the new Mobile G5, we're getting the MediaTek Helio A25 processor, compared to the Qualcomm Snapdragon 665 with the Moto G Fast. Now that processor that comes with the Moto G Fast is certainly a bit faster compared to what we're getting with the new Mobile G5, but then you have to also factor in that with the G5, we are getting the extra RAM, which certainly does work in this phone's favor. Now I did run a benchmark test with both devices, so we'll take a look at those results right now using Geekbench 5, and here are the scores. So with the new Mobile G5, I got a single core score of 123, and then a multi-core score of 876. And then with the Moto G Fast, I got a single core score of 312 and a multi-core of 1387. So just by looking at these scores, it's pretty easy to tell that the Moto G Fast is going to be giving you better performance out of these two phones. And I would say that most of that does come down to this phone having the Qualcomm Snapdragon 665. Now that being said, I do think it is very smart of New Mobile to include 4 gigs of RAM with the G5 instead of also giving it 3, just like the Moto G Fast. So at least when it comes to RAM, you are going to have a bit of a better experience here with the G5. Now video recording with the new Mobile G5 maxes out at 1080p at 30 FPS with both the front and rear cameras. Whereas with the Moto G Fast, we are limited at 1080p with the front camera, but the rear camera can take 4K video. When it comes to battery capacity, with the new Mobile G5, we're getting a 5,000 mAh internal battery, and then we're getting a smaller 4,000 mAh internal battery with the Moto G Fast. And then neither of these two phones feature NFC. But now that we've gone over the main specifications of both phones, let's now take a closer look at the hardware. Now both of these devices do feature a plastic build beyond the displays, but both phones also do feel very solid. Now taking a look at the left side of both devices, they both feature the slot for the microSD card and SIM card. And then taking a look at the right side of both phones, they both have the power button, volume down and volume up. Then up top on the new Mobile G5, we have nothing, whereas with the Moto G Fast, we have the 3.5mm headphone jack, and we have the noise-canceling microphone. And then taking a look at the bottom of both phones, they both have the USB-C port for charging and data transfer, they both have the speaker, they both have the microphone, and then with the new Mobile G5, we do have the 3.5mm headphone jack on the bottom of the phone. And I personally prefer this placement. Now I'd like to clarify and point out that with both of these phones, we do have support for the traditional Android 3-button navigation and also support for gestures. Now, I typically go with the default when it comes to me making reviews and other content about any phones in this channel. So by default, with the new Mobile G5, we have the 3-button navigation, and then by default, with the Moto G Fast, we have the gesture navigation. Now, you can switch from one to the other just by going to the settings and searching up navigation. So it's very easy to switch. I know that everybody has their own preference, whether it's one way or the other. But let's now do a speed test comparison between these two phones. So we're going to start by pulling up the camera apps on both. So 1, 2, 3, go. And the Moto G Fast was faster at pulling up the camera. Let's now go to Google Chrome on both devices. 1, 2, 3, go. And the Moto G Fast was faster at pulling up Google Chrome as well. Let's now go to yahoo.com. 1, 2, 3, go. And it looks like the Moto G Fast was faster at starting up Yahoo. Let's now go to engadget.com on both phones. 1, 2, 3, go. And Engadget was faster to load up here on the Moto G Fast as well. So it does seem like a pretty consistent trend here that when browsing the web on both phones, you're typically going to be getting faster performance with the Moto G Fast compared to the new Mobile G5. Now scrolling with both devices is smooth. It does seem a bit smoother with the Moto G Fast, but then again, it seems like the Moto G Fast is also doing well. It also seems like the Moto G Fast has better viewing angles compared to the new Mobile G5. You can see in this situation, we are viewing the phones at a little bit of an angle, and the G Fast appears to be a bit brighter compared to the G5. Now, when you look at both displays head on, things do look a bit more similar. But let's go to this final article here. 1, 2, 3, go. And again, you can see in this situation, the Moto G Fast does pull up the article faster. Now, if the new Mobile G5 had 3 gigs of RAM instead of the 4 that we have, I feel like the performance would be significantly slower when it comes to web browsing, for example. So having that extra gig of RAM combined with the MediaTek Helio A25 does allow the new Mobile G5 to keep up, but I do applaud Motorola for giving us the Snapdragon 665 with the Moto G Fast, as that's definitely a bit more powerful of a processor, and then by doing that, I guess Motorola figured that they'd give us less RAM. So in conclusion, both of these phones are definitely interesting options from both companies. I do feel like with the new Mobile G5, this is probably one of the best attempts that I've seen from New Mobile yet at giving us a device that's very affordable, but at the same time also doesn't give us too many compromises. I appreciate with the new Mobile G5 that we're getting 64 gigs of internal storage. That's definitely something that is pretty rare to see from a phone in this price range. And then also I like that we're getting a really big battery at 5,000 milliamp hours. And then with the Moto G Fast, I feel like with this phone, really the only benefit that we're getting out of it compared to the new Mobile G5 is having the Qualcomm Snapdragon 665. However, I've got to say that processor is so much better compared to the Helio A25 that in itself probably is enough to justify getting this phone over this one. But I'm definitely very curious to know what you think about these two devices and which one you would go with if you had to make a decision. Definitely let me know. But this is the new Mobile G5 versus the Motorola Moto G Fast.